In 1962, I joined my first band, the Atlantic Blues. We really wanted to do some shadow stuff, but first of all, our guitar player wasn't actually that good. And secondly, the Shadows didn't have a piano player, so we didn't do it. Bruce Welch, why didn't you have a piano player?
Didn't need one, Rick.
Right.
Didn't need
Thanks
one.
very much. You've got one now, though, haven't you?
We have now. Well, we have, you know, synthesizer players and all that stuff now,
Yeah.
all clever stuff, as you know. But of course, in those days, you didn't, you know, it was just a rhythm guitar, lead guitar, bass guitar, drums.
And
3 chords in any key.
oh, you did more than 3 chords. That was what was
Eventually.
really clever.
Eventually, but 3 chords got us through the first 2 or 3 years.
Any particular key? Was it always the same?
A.
It was always
A minor. Shadow's career is in A minor. Apache,
But I mean,
Man of Mystery, all of them.
Apache wasn't the first single, though, was it?
No, it wasn't the first single. It was the first hit
Yeah.
in July of 1960. We'd had 3 flops before then.
Did they sell afterwards?
Well, I think, you know, EMI keep putting out. They didn't sell. They didn't become hits.
Hmm.
Certainly, Apache was the first single hit. The band had, of course, because we were Cliff's band for 18 months before that.
Let's go right back to the beginning. I mean, it's very well known that you weren't the Shadows, first of all.
No, we started with Cliff in October of '58. That was the very first tour, and it was the Cliff Richard and the Drifters, because his band was his local guys with the Drifters. That, as I say, that was October '58. On the Kalin twins from America had a fantastic record called When. So they were top of the bill. It was a bit of a variety act bill. You know, had Eddie Calvert playing "Oh Mine Papa."
Oh, wow.
Closing the first half. You know, I think there was a trio on there. You know, the usual sort of variety bill. And Cliff and the Drifters were on just before Herbie and Hal Kalin, the Kalin twins. And of course, Cliff was sexy then. You know, he had the pink jacket. First tour, we were Hank and I were 16. Cliff was
16?
16, yeah.
But
Cliff was 17.
You were working with Hank before you teamed up
Well, I
with
went to
Cliff,
school
though.
with Hank.
Right.
Yeah, in Newcastle. We met at school when we were 11. We passed the 11 plus somehow, as it was in those days.
So how did you become a band? How did you pick up guitars?
We picked up guitars basically in 1956. Skiffle came. Well, Trad
Yeah.
Jazz was there first. Chris Barber and his band,
Yeah.
and then Lonnie, as you know, Lonnie Donegan was his banjo player.
Yeah.
And Lonnie Donegan's Skiffle group came out of that, and Rock Island Line. And Skiffle was always, Lonnie always used to say, this is sort of, anybody can play this music, you know, all you need is 2 or 3 acoustic guitars and a T-chest bass and a washboard and all that sort of stuff. And I think people like Hank and myself, John and Paul in Liverpool, everybody had a Skiffle group. So I had one Skiffle group at school.
What was it called?
The Railroaders, right? And Hank had another skiffle group called the Crescent City Skiffle Group. Now Hank was the purist, so he had the duffel coat, the college scarf, and he played banjo. He played banjo, so he would be doing Lead Belly and, you know, Go Down Old Hannah, all that stuff. And my skiffle group was, I liked Elvis and Blueberry, you know, Fats Domino, all that stuff that was happening. Because '56 was fantastic for rock and roll. Apart from Lonnie was the catalyst here, without a doubt. He made thousands of people like myself and Hank pick up a guitar. You know, that's really, we owe that to Lonnie, I think.
So how did you join together?
Well, we had the 2 skiffle groups at school, 14 years old, nearly 15. And as I say, I used to do Elvis stuff and Lonnie stuff, so I was like a commercial. The Railroaders were commercial,
Right.
at school. You know?
Yeah.
And I wanted Hank to join, and we just moved on a little bit. And for Hank's 16th birthday, his dad bought him a Hofner Congress guitar, 16 guineas, but a guitar, you know. And I got Hank to join the Railroaders because he was a great player even then. He could play single notes.
Which is unheard of.
Unheard of. He could actually play single notes at 16.
But where did you play? Was it just like a rehearsal fun at school?
Rehearsal fun at school, and then in Newcastle, on Tyne, they used to have sort of, we used to call them up north go as you pleasers, and they're little talent competitions, maybe on a Friday night or a Saturday night, and there'd be half a dozen, you know, there'd be an opera singer on and a skiffle band and a vocalist, you know, who thought he was Frankie Lane, and if you won, you won £2. So we used to win a few £2, you know, as because skiffle was happening and everything was happening, and so we do Lonnie and all the stuff, just copying the music of the day. And,
were you a vocal band as well? Did you sing?
Yeah, we sang. Yeah. Well, I sang because I thought I was Elvis, or what? I was trying to be a cross between Elvis, Fats Domino, Little Richard. It's not easy trying to be a cross, you know,
no,
at
tricky.
the age of 15, trying to be all of those in one go.
Any writing then? Doing any writing?
No, not at 15. At 16, we came to London.
Why?
Well, the railroad is, first of all, in 1956, we'd heard Tommy Steele, who unfortunately is often forgotten here.
Yeah.
Tommy came out of a place called the Two Eyes Coffee Bar, and there was lots of publicity. This guy was a merchant seaman, came back, went to this coffee bar in Soho, was discovered by, I think, Larry Parnes and John Kennedy. Mm-hmm. We're going to make you a star, son. And Tommy said, well, you've only got 2 weeks because I'm going back on the ship. Anyway, all that sort of publicity was going in the Daily Mirror and all that stuff, you know. And somehow the railroaders heard about a talent competition in London at Edmonton, the Granada Edmonton. And
you got rid of the Crescent thing that had gone.
The Crescent City had gone because Hank had joined the railroaders, now playing single notes. Clever stuff. So we came to London. The band came to London, the skiffle group, for the weekend. The competition was on Sunday night at Edmonton. I forget what we played, actually. We played skiffle songs, probably. We were a skiffle group. But we didn't win, and we came third.
Do you remember who won? Who came second?
Yeah, there was a Malaysian opera singer. Then
a trad household name.
He's a household name in Malaya. Then there was a trad band, you know, because trad was huge.
Yeah.
Then, you know, it really was huge. And we came third, the railroaders. Anyway, so Sunday night, we're in London, and the manager of the theatre said, where are you going to stay tonight? We said, well, we don't know. We don't know anybody. We've just come down, you know. He said, big Scots guy was. He said, well, you must have someone. I said, no, we're just going to go, I don't know. He said, oh. And he rang someone. He rang, it turned out to be a landlady in Finsbury Park, Holly Park. Now, as luck would have it, how lucky can you get? This lady was a Geordie. Oh. And he said, I got a couple of Geordies here who got nowhere to sleep, you know, nowhere to stay tonight. And, well, they can come and stay with us, you know, stay with us. So Hank and I went there. The other two guys said, we're going home. The other two guys in the band, because we'd lost the competition, Hank and I said, we think we'll stay. Not knowing, you know, we'd left school, we were just 16, left school, and we went and stayed at Mrs. Bowman's in Finsbury Park, and we stayed with her for about 9 months. She let us have, she had an attic room with a little gas fire. Remember those gas fires?
Yeah.
You get the mottled legs when you sit in front of the gas fire.
That's it. Excellent.
I married one of those, you know. But so this good old landlady let us stay there, and this is April the 6th, I'm good at dates, April the 6th, 58. So we were 16. The next day we went to the Two Eyes, we found the Two Eyes Coffee Bar in Soho. And it was the coffee bar era. The whole of Soho was Italian coffee bars. In Newcastle on Tyne, we'd never seen a machine. You know the old the coffee machine? Gaggia, whatever they call.
Yeah.
You know, frothy coffee, never, you know, couldn't afford it anyway. And the cheese rolls had little black bits on the top of the... Never seen in Newcastle, never seen them. You know.
You do now.
You do now, yes. Anyway, so we're in Soho, 16, go to the Two Eyes, and the Two Eyes was a place where everyone got up and sort of jammed with everybody else. Can I get up and do a couple of numbers? Can we sit in with you? You know, that sort of place. And everybody was going there, all the wannabes. I want to be famous, I want to be a rock and roll star, because Tommy had come out of there. So that's why we went to Soho. And from the first week of April till the end of September, we were at the Two Eyes probably every day.
Did you get up and play?
Get up and play, yeah. Hank and I were known as the Geordie Boys because we were from Newcastle. We had to tone down our accents because nobody knew what we were talking about. You know, well, where am I? It's like, oh, but Hank and I thought we were, you know, the Everleys, Elvis, Fats Domino.
Any famous people in there at the time?
Not famous, no. No. Terry Dean had come out of there. Terry came out of there. He covered a white sport coat. Before your time, this is.
I'm afraid
Don't forget, you're just a young man.
God, I wish.
67, I'm an old man now.
I'm not far behind.
Terry Dean was there. Larry Page, the Teenage Rage, came out of there.
Yeah.
But it was just a little breeding ground of a tiny little coffee bar, probably, 100 people at a real push. Tiny stage at one end, about 18 inches high, and about a yard wide, so you just stood along. And we met so many people. Once they knew who we were, and we didn't have any, no money and stuff, Paul Lincoln, who was the owner, who was a wrestler, he wrestled as Dr. Death. Dr. Death. And he's in Southampton now, he's still alive, good old Paul.
Wow.
And they used to, if we were lucky, they would pay us 18 shillings a night, which is 80p, I guess.
Yeah.
80p.
Yeah.
And he'd work from 7 till 11, singing and playing and jamming. And during those few months, at the age of 16, we got to know and played with Jed Harris, Tony Meehan, Brian Bennett, Licorice Locking, all guys who eventually became the Shadows, or were in the Shadows. And we just met so many people. It was great fun, 16 years old, you're in London. It was a happening time. Every coffee bar, Heaven and Hell was next door. All coffee bars, the Macabre, with coffins and skulls on the seats and all that stuff. I mean, it's just, for two kids from Newcastle, it was unreal. But it was the music was buzzing. Rock and roll was huge. Skiffle, funny enough, was on the wane by then, 58, end of 58. Quite a short-lived, craze, if you like. But so many people in our business started, from Lonnie. He was, he's almost a forgotten influence,
So had your music changed in those months you were there?
Not really. I suppose we became, because we were self-taught. I always say this to Bert Wheen, Hank and myself, I think were the only two guys that made it who didn't use his play in a day book. Because the play in a day book, I don't know if did you ever see it?
Oh, very much so, yeah.
When you got to about page 3, it started on demi-semi-quavers and crotchets and stuff like that. I mean, I said, this is not for me. I don't think Buddy Holly and Elvis used demi-semi-quavers and crotchets and all that stuff, So we just self-taught, learned, whatever the music of the day was, we were singing it, jamming it, meeting all these great people, On the nights that we didn't play, or this particular night, I used to sell, there was an orange juice machine at the back of the coffee bar. And I tried to sell the orange juice, and they used to have those paper cups. Is it polystyrene maybe?
Yeah.
But after, you could fiddle they were, it was a shilling I think for an orange juice, And you could fiddle a little bit of money because you could use the same cup twice or 2 or 3 times, but eventually that cup got soggy, But anyway, anything you had to eat, we had to eat, And a few months had gone by, and Hank and I were there all of the time, and we got to know so many people, in that summer of 58. And one night, Hank wasn't there. Cliff, this guy came down, was playing on the stage, and it was Harry Webb, as he was then, Harry Webb and the Drifters. And
so there was a Drifters, was there?
Yeah, Cliff's group was the Drifters.
And they existed?
Yeah, they existed,
Oh, okay.
Maybe they were his original skiffle group, but they were his mates, and they existed,
Right.
yeah.
Anybody famous in it?
Not at that time. No.
Okay.
No. And they were from like Cheshunt in Hertfordshire. Anyway, I'm flogging orange juice at the back, and this guy gets up, you know, and he looked amazing. He looked like Elvis because he was olive skin, you know, swarthy and long sideburns, you know, black greasy hair. He had the collar up. You know, Elvis gave us the collar look, you know, the collar up, yeah. And I think he had a crucifix, you know, so it was the doing all
Mr. Cool.
Mr. Cool.
Yeah.
You know, and I didn't know who he was, and I went back to Hank that night, back to Finsbury Park, and said, there was a great, you know, guy in tonight. Looked great, you know, sounded great. Didn't really know who he was. And then a few months had gone by, I never thought anything of it. Am I boring you with this story, by the way, because you haven't asked me a question for 15 minutes?
Far away.
So I'm trying to, leading up to how we met Cliff.
Yeah,
and,
no, absolutely.
Evidently Cliff played there for a few days, and I think they realised that Harry Webb wasn't cool. So they went to the pub a couple of doors away and eventually came up with, you know, Cliff Richards. And they liked Little Richard didn't have an S on it. So it became Cliff Richard because of Little Richard.
Right.
So he changed his name, became Cliff and the Drifters. And
because you all changed your name as well, didn't you?
yeah. Well, I was born Bruce Cripps
Right.
funnily enough, I was born in Bognor Regis. But Hitler, this is November 41. There wasn't room, it was either Hitler or myself, because Hitler was just across the water at the time.
Yeah.
So, discretion being the better part of valour, we all moved up, you know, up north.
Mm.
But
and Hank wasn't Hank Marvin either.
he was Brian
Rankin.
Robson Rankin.
Yeah.
I think, yeah, Brian Rankin. But he was, funnily enough, at school he was always Hank.
Interesting.
Yeah, always. I mean, I knew him as Hank. I didn't know him as Brian.
It was one of those criteria at that particular time. You had to change your name, didn't you? Really?
Well, if you wanted to be in it, like in the rock and roll business or the skiff, you know, if you wanted to be up on stage, your real name was usually crap, you know. So I was going to be Buddy Welch for a while, you know. Once Buddy had made it, I thought, oh, what a great name, Buddy, you know, Buddy Welch, you know, that'd be a great name.
So anyway, you're back at the cafe again.
So I'm at the cafe, yeah.
Yep.
Anyway, so a few months gone by, and I think it got to about September of '58, and Hank was jamming in the afternoon, playing, and some guy came down. And said he'd heard about a great guitarist in the Two Eyes. Now, there were two great guitarists in the Two Eyes. Hank Marvin was one of them, and Tony Sheridan. Have you heard of a guy called Tony Sheridan? Who finished up with the Beatles as his backing band in Germany. But Tony was another great player. But Tony wasn't there that day, and this guy came down looking for a lead guitarist. He said, I managed Cliff Richard, and of course we didn't know really who Cliff Richard was. And he said, I've got a tour starting in like 3 weeks. I need a lead guitarist. So Hank, being, you know, played him a few licks, you know.
Single notes.
Single notes. If you could play, and Hank could, if you could play the introduction to That'll Be the Day.
You're in.
You were in. And Hank could play it perfectly. In fact, Hank taught Tony Sheridan how to play That'll Be the Day, the intro. Because we used to sit and listen, you know, the little dance set, we had a little dance set record player, and you'd play the record over and over and over.
Yeah.
Oh, you know, how does he do that? And of course the fingering was hard on That'll Be the Day. Because being from Newcastle and young and everything, we didn't realise that Holly had a capo on. We didn't know what a capo was. So Hank would be doing the stretching, you know, the long, big stretches. Anyway, this guy said, played him a few licks, and I think My Babe and stuff like that, the old, you know, and offered Hank the job. He said, great, would you like to, it's a 3-week tour. And Hank said, well, I'll do it if my mate can come, you know.
Wow.
And we went round the corner up Dean Street, up into a tailor shop, up the stairs, and there he was, standing like this, you know, practicing for later life, getting fitted for the famous pink jacket, as it became. You know, he had the black shirt, the pink tie, and the pink jacket he wore on the first tour. And as I say, Hank and I were 16, he was 17. We sort of looked each other up and down, you know. You know, we're all pimples and, you know, all the stuff. And he said, can you come out to my house and we'll have like an audition, I suppose. So Hank and I went on the Green Line bus from the outside Portland Place to Cheshunt in Hertfordshire, took our little guitars with us, you know. and did an audition in his front room. Cliff lived in a council house with, there was him, his 3 sisters and his mum and dad. And we went in the front room and did That'll Be the Day, which Hank could play.
Yeah.
A whole lot of shaking going on, My Babe, and a few other tunes of the day.
No sign of a bass player or drummer yet?
No, well they came because the bass player and the drummer were in the Drifters. That was
okay.
We already had those. And a guy called Sammy Samwell, who wasn't in Cliff's original group, had written a song called Move It. Move It, fantastic record. And Sammy had joined the Drifters. So you had, for the tour, once we passed the audition, you had Hank, myself on rhythm guitar, Terry Smart on drums, and Ian Samwell, who'd just joined, who'd written Move It, was like the bass player. Not really a bass player, but played the bass. And that was Cliff Richard and the Drifters on the first tour. Funny enough, on that tour was the Most brothers. Have you heard? Mickey Most.
Yeah.
Who also thought they were the Everly Brothers. You know, if you were a duo, if you were an English 2 kids singing together, you were the Everly Brothers, or you were trying to be. And Mickey Most was trying to be with Alex Most, the 2 of them. And they'd hired a bass player called Jet Harris for the tour. So Jet, who we knew from the 2 Eyes, and we'd played with during the summer, he was backing Mickey Most. They all heard Hank play, and Hank earned extra money for the tour because the Kalin twins, he played for the Kalin twins and Mickey and the Most brothers. So he was working for 3 people, Hank. Already he was ahead.
Yeah.
Because we finished up we got £12 a week on the first tour and pay your own digs.
Wow.
Yeah.
And Hank got a little bit more.
Hank got definitely a little bit more, yeah.
Wow.
Great, but he deserved it, it was great.
And it was just around the UK initially, was it?
UK, yeah. All the usual,
Was there a record deal then?
Yeah, Cliff had Move It. We weren't on Move It, you see. Cliff had already made Move It, yeah.
That was the first hit, really.
So by the tour started October the 5th, I think Move It was in the top 20.
Yeah.
By the time the tour finished, he was number 2. And getting an enormous reception. So much, in fact, that, as I said earlier, we were on just before the Kalin twins, and they were having trouble following him, and they were top of the bill.
Yeah.
And I think they asked Cliff's management if we would move into the first half, and we wouldn't, or he wouldn't, as you do.
Yeah, absolutely.
So that was it, the first tour, and it was originally for 3 weeks and just kept going. But let me get back to Move It, because Hank and myself weren't on Move It. This guy, Sammy Samwell, had written this song on the bus going out to Cheshunt. And Cliff already had signed a deal with EMI, or Columbia as it was then. And Norrie Paramore, bless him, was the A&R man, the producer. And he had signed Cliff. He hadn't signed the band because all session, in those days, session men played on the records. So Norrie had said they were going to make it. All English singers in those days used to cover the American charts, as you probably remember.
Yeah.
If there was a big #1 in America, they'd get some English guy to cover it, Anywhere from Cliff to Craig Douglas to, Larry Page. Now what a move, Larry Page and the Teenage Rage. His A&R man, for his first record, got him to cover That'll Be the Day by Buddy Holly and the Crickets. Was that a shrewd move? Anyway, Cliff was going to cover something called Schoolboy Crush. That was going to be the A-side. And they didn't have a B-side. And Sammy Samwell said, I've written this song. And played and Move It. And Norrie said, right, we'll do that for the B-side. So they had Terry Smart, who was the Drifters drummer, Cliff's mate, Sammy Samwell, who wrote Move It, on sort of second guitar, and Norrie brought in Frank Clark, an old session man, on big bass, and a session guitarist called Ernie Shear. People who read the dots could, play single notes, And Ian Samuel actually wrote that da 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 da, da and he showed him what he wanted, and the Ernie Shear played it, and of course it was a fantastic record.
Yeah.
Fantastic, but it was the B-side, and everyone. I wasn't there, obviously, and Hank wasn't there, but Cliff said, "Oh no, not Move It's better than Schoolboy Crush." And Norrie said, he did this a couple of times with us. He said, "I'll tell you what I'll do. I'll take them both home and play them to my daughters, and see which one they like." And they chose Move It. And Move It was the A side, and was instant smash. Fantastic record. It's still a fantastic record.
Yeah, it's great. It was ahead of its time.
50 years later, it still sounds fantastic. And just to get back to the tour, we did the tour, and then after that, we just kept going.
So what happened? Did sort of Cliff sit down and say, "Look, I'd like this to be permanent"?
Yeah, we're just going to go on. It was fantastic, and
what was the lineup then? That was yourself
at that on the tour.
At the end of the tour,
the end of the tour was still Terry Smart, the original drummer.
Yeah.
Ian Samuel, Sammy Samuel on bass. Me on rhythm guitar, Hank on lead guitar. But during the tour, Cliff was listening. He listened to Jet Harris on bass, and Jet was the bass player. Played single notes. He was just a great player and looked great.
He had an original sound too.
He did, and Jet thought he was James Dean and looked like James Dean.
Yeah.
We used to call him the Vita Point kid. He used to dye his hair blonde. The old collar. Everybody used to put the collar up. In Newcastle, none of us did this. We owe this to Elvis. Everybody wore the collar up. And so Cliff said, I think he realised, to be honest, that Sammy, who was his mate, and written Move It, obviously wasn't as good a bass player as Jet Harris was. And so he asked Jet. It was very difficult. He asked Jet to join. He'd heard Tony Meehan had jammed with us in the Two Eyes. As I said, keep saying this, but Hank and I were 16. This kid, we were playing one night in the Two Eyes, and this kid said, "Can I get up and play drums with you for a couple of numbers?" We said, "All right." And this 15-year-old kid got up, and it was Tony Meehan. He was a fantastic drummer. And what we'd realised during the tour, because we were very experienced at 16, after 3 weeks' work, to be fair, and I'm not being nasty at all, Terry Smart had his limitations as a drummer.
Yeah.
Cliff was going to be huge. He wanted the best in the land. He wanted his band to be the best. So by January of '59, which is 2 months after we started, really, his mates left the band, left the Drifters. And then we had Hank Marvin, Bruce Welch, Jet Harris and Tony Meehan. They were the Drifters. And we played on various records up to Living Doll and stuff like that, hits. And then we I told you earlier, we'd had 3 flops. Cliff was always badgering Norrie, saying, "You must sign my band, Norrie. You must listen to my band, sign them to a record deal," which he did. But we'd had flops. Anyway, we made a good record called Saturday Dance. It was the last Drifters record. And we tried to release it in America, or we were going to release it in America. And of course, we didn't realise it. There was a black vocal group who were #1 at the time, massive vocal group, the Drifters. And they put an injunction. They said, "You cannot use the Drifters' name."
Oh, right.
Because we've already a big vocal group. So we had to come up with a new name. And as you do, I wasn't there. Jet and Hank got on their scooters and went out to a pub in Ruislip, Lido.
Ruislip, Lido, yeah.
Lido. And they sat there having a couple of jars and talking about the 4 Jets and the this and the this and the that and the that. And I think Jet eventually said, Cliff's always, when we work, Cliff's in the spotlight up the front and we're always in the shadow at the back. Why don't we call ourselves the Shadows?
Excellent.
And that's where it came from. So we owe it to Jet.
Well, so overnight you became the Shadows?
Overnight we became the Shadows. This is about probably of July-ish of 1959. So we'd only been in the Drifters for about 7, 8 months maybe, if that long.
Now, you obviously moved from Mrs. Bowman, or whatever her name was, in Finsbury Park.
Not at the time.
Are you still there?
Oh, yeah. 12 quid a week doesn't give you much in...
Oh, that's true. Did she come and see you play?
She did, yeah.
Oh,
We got her a
how
free
fun.
ticket.
Wow.
Yeah. But I think she realised we kept raiding her fridge in the middle of the night. Food was disappearing out of her fridge.
So
Anyway, so suddenly we were the Shadows, yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah. Which is mid-59.
And it sort of became known as Cliff Richard and the Shadows, didn't it?
It did, yeah. Because, well, we've been the Shadows, nearly 50 years now.
Mm.
So the Drifters was fairly short-lived. But that was the story behind it. We had to change the name.
But you had a record deal on your own then, didn't you?
We did, yeah. After much badgering by Cliff to Norrie saying, you should listen to my band, they're great, this, to that. And it was a good band. I mean, it was a good little band for the time. But I mean, he had 2 great players, Well, 3 great players, not me, but Tony Meehan was a great drummer. Unique style.
Yeah.
Hank was fantastic. He's always been a great player. Even at that age, he was a great player. Just inventive.
What was unusual is an instrumental band.
We became an instrumental band.
Mm.
We became an instrumental band. We'd had the first record was a vocal, Feeling Fine. Flop, didn't mean a thing. And we even did Oh Boy with it. We went on Oh Boy, doing Feeling Fine, the new record slot, Zilch.
Right.
This is Cliff's band, here they are, Zilch. So we thought, well, that's been a flop. Then Jet Harris wrote something called Jet Black, an instrumental, bass, dum, 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 dum. Came out, Zilch, nothing. Then we made it, well, that instrumental's failed, let's do another vocal. Because we all thought we could sing, of course. We all wanted to be singers, really.
Well, in fairness, you can sing. Actually,
but, we didn't have voices and things. Anyway, so then we did Saturday Dance, which nearly hit the chart. And we're on tour. In those days, Rick, before you were born, we toured probably 11 months a year. We were on tour all the time. All of the time. Not doing a long. I mean, the top of the bill was probably 20 minutes, 25 minutes. But the travelling on tour before the motorways, of course. Mm. The M1 wasn't open then.
Yeah, I did do a bit of that.
Did you do a bit of that?
Yeah, I did a bit of that in the.
So you're older than I thought then.
I think I'm a lot older than you. You're very kind. I shall pass you a check in a minute. But go on, carry on. Yeah.
Yeah. So where was I? Oh yeah.
11 months of the year on the road.
On the road all the time. And I've already forgotten what I was going to say.
The Shadows. We're talking about the
Shadows.
You had the three flops.
All right. So we're on tour, and there's a guy called Jerry Lorden on the tour. So this would be about April of 1960. And Jerry Lorden was a singer-songwriter, and he'd had a couple of small hits. He had, in fact, on this particular tour of April 1960, he was in the top 10 with a song called Who Could Be Bluer? Who Could Be Bluer? And he'd had a couple of small chart things, but he'd also had a #1 in America. He wrote a song called A House and a Car and a Wedding Ring, which was a big #1 hit. Anyway, he was a songwriter. So we're on the coach that we used to sleep on as well, sometimes. And we're all talking, as you do on the mates. We're on the way to wherever. And we're saying, well, we don't know what to do now. We've had, we need a new single. And we've had 3 flops, and, EMI will probably give us the elbow soon, because we tried instrumentals. He said, I've got a tune. Can I play you this tune? I said, yeah. So he went to the back of the bus and came, and he had a ukulele. And he said, just listen to this tune. He went, down, 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 down. And playing the rhythm on the
ukulele.
We all went, yeah, we like that tune. Can we play that to Norrie Paramore? Because Norrie was God, So he made a little demo. We took it to Norrie. And said, Norrie, listen to this tune. Great tune. He said, yeah, I like that. He said,
didn't have a name at that time.
Yeah, Apache.
Oh, it was still called
Apache.
He'd already called it Apache.
Yeah, Apache.
Okay.
And he said, yeah, like that. He said, but your next A side is going to be this song called Quartermaster Stores. Remember that old army song?
Yeah.
Da 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 da
Yeah.
da 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 in the stores. So we went, oh right, oh, okay. All right. Bear in mind how old we are, you know,
Yeah.
17 or something, 18 by then, and so we did an arrangement of Quartermaster Stores, put that down, which was quite good. It was, you know, Hank had the Strat and the Echo box and stuff, and then we recorded Apache. I think take 3. You know.
Why did he call it Apache, by the way? Do you know?
Don't know.
Oh, okay.
Just so we recorded the 2 tracks, and we went, wow, listen to Apache. I mean, it was at the time, you know, middle of 1960, June, July 1960. It was a new sound. And Norrie said, well, the thing is going to be the Quartermaster Stores will be the A side. And we went, oh, Norrie, it's like happening again.
Yeah.
The same thing with Move It. No, Apache's better than, you know. He said, tell you what I'll do. I'll take it home to my daughters. And he took Quartermaster Stores and Apache and played it to his daughters. And his daughters said, Apache's the better one. Apache became the A side.
Did the daughters end up owning EMI? By
No, they should have, I think,
Yeah.
in a way. But it was great. I'll tell you why Norrie was so great. First of all, he was a proper muso, you know.
Yeah.
He read the dots, all the stuff. He was a much older man, of course, than us. He was probably in his 40s when we were 17 or something. So they were much more experienced. But what he did do, he gave us he was clever enough. He probably couldn't play rock and roll and didn't understand it, or thought it was a bit maybe below him, you know. But he left it to us. Yeah. He just guided us and suggested this and that. Maybe because he didn't understand it so much, or what we were trying to do, he just left us to it in a way. Still had overall control, obviously. And so we released, Apache came out. So we had then been Cliff's backing group for 18 months.
Yeah.
Apache came out, went to #1, sold 1 million records, and we were still Cliff's band.
I mean, I remember very well when it came out. I mean, I went and bought it, 4.11 it cost.
Was it?
It was 4.11, and it was very different.
It was different, yeah. Very much.
And every band suddenly then, every guitar band wanted to sound like the Shadows.
Absolutely, absolutely. And the guitar, sorry, not the guitar, the group boom came from the Shadows.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
And it was also an unusual thing because if you're in a band, there had to be the lead guitar, the rhythm guitar, drum and the bass, and that was it.
The sort of format.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was. Yeah.
So what did Cliff think?
He was delighted. He'd been badgering on to Norrie for 18 months or a couple of years. Listen to my band, listen to my group, they're great, and this, that, and the other. And suddenly we were big as a band, as the group.
But it never occurred to you to leave Cliff?
Never. No. Because I've always said this, from October 58 until December 68 when I left. That 10 years was the Cliff and the Shadows period. But it was we never got the feeling that Cliff was the star and we were the band. Never. Not from him. We got it from management.
Yeah.
The first 18 months he had various managers. We felt it a bit there, but never from him. He was always the 5 guys, singing, playing, rehearsing, having a laugh, You
used to do your own spot though, didn't you, in the
we
shows?
Did, yeah.
That came
well, what would happen then, suddenly the Shadows would close the first half, do 18 minutes or something, or 20 minute interval, and then we would change our suits, because we could afford suits then. We would change from the Shadows suit into the Cliff suit, and we would come on and back Cliff for 25 minutes or whatever. So you had the Shadows section, you had Cliff and the Shadows section. Great, it was fantastic. But they were the early days ago, all the screaming, all the Beatlemania before Beatlemania, all that stuff was going on.
And that was just you guys?
And that was just the band.
Yeah. So
in the dressing room.
So you must have been under pressure then to come up with another really hot single straight after.
Yeah, suddenly you get, without realising, you get on the treadmill. Of course, we were on 2 treadmills because we were
On the Cliff treadmill.
on the Cliff
and
treadmill
Shadows, yeah.
and the Shadows treadmill. Cliff would be inundated with, songwriters looking, trying to get a Cliff record, obviously.
Yeah.
And then once we'd had Apache, we got suddenly everybody was an instrumental writer. So we'd have, Geronimo,
Yeah.
Mohawk, all these songs used to come through as they do. All these great ideas, all these terrible tunes, but, all Indian names. We had all the Indian names in the country. And Cliff would have all the great love songs, all the rock and roll songs,
But you had some great instrumentals in them, FBI and all those, those tracks. Great
well,
tracks.
we had the follow-up to Apache was Man of Mystery, which was from a black and white TV series at the time. A great tune written by an old songwriter called Michael Carr, who wrote South of the Border.
Right.
Who then went on to write, now you had a 60-year-old guy writing for 18-year-old kids, and he wrote Kon-Tiki, and he'd always try and take me, Bruce, come to the pub, I've got this idea for something, and then he'd send you a little acetate, remember the acetates?
Yeah.
Kind of put this on, and we went, yeah, that's great. So he wrote South of the Border, Man of Mystery for the Shadows, Kon-Tiki for the Shadows.
Yeah.
The old style songwriters.
Now, were you writing yourselves?
And we had started to write by then, Rick, yeah. I'll have to backtrack because I suppose our wanting to write or trying to write probably came from Buddy Holly's influence. Holly and the Crickets started in July 57, so we'd be nearly 16 then. No, 15. We were 15 then. Because during 1958 we started to write songs. I mean, crap, but songs. Good crap.
Yeah.
Very twee, very young, very teenage, because that's what it was. Pop was very, very simple. I love you, you love me, Moon in June, all that stuff. That's what it was. But we did start to write. So suddenly, a year had gone by, and we were in this position. Hank and I would write, or the Four Shadows would write things together.
Still the same lineup?
Yeah, still the same lineup. And Hank and I would write, I would write something on my own, and I'd be writing something, and Cliff would say, I can't finish this, you got any ideas for this, So Cliff and I, we did a couple of those I'll come on to. And we became songwriters, and we had this guy called Cliff Richard who seemed to record every song we'd written. We'd had this fantastic, he was the biggest star in the country, pop star. And every time Hank and I or the band would write something, he'd say, I love that, let's do that. So it was like, it began to, get like Christmas every day, because this guy was recording all your songs. And in fact, in 1960, our record, the Shadows record, Apache, which knocked off number 1, Cliff Richard and the Shadows, a song called Please Don't Tease, which I'd written. So, we were sort of songwriters in inverted commas.
Must be great to knock yourself off the top.
We knocked ourselves off the top. Unbelievable, funny little things. So we wrote more, and the more we wrote, the more Cliff recorded them. He and I, because I couldn't finish, Don't Talk to Him, things like that.
Yeah.
Bachelor Boy, obviously later on.
Have you got a favourite?
What, as a song?
Yeah.
No,
The one that really sticks out, you go, I'm really proud of that.
No, I cringe at a few.
Do you really?
I can tell you the ones I cringe at.
Go on then.
I wrote a song called, funny enough, a song I wrote by myself called I Love You, which was the Christmas number 1 in 61, I think, or no, 1960. And the lyric is, we're not very big in lyrics in Newcastle. And the lyric goes, because we wrote words, not lyrics. Your love means more to me than all the fishes swimming in the sea. There's the first line of it. And all these years later, I'm in we have this great society called SODS, Society of Distinguished Songwriters.
Yeah.
Right? And you're sitting with Don Blacks, Tim Rice's, fantastic writers,
Yeah.
lyricists, all the top writers. And what have you written, Bruce? Your love means more to me than all the fishes swimming in the sea. And they're going.
But it was number one.
But it was number one. And the same thing with Bachelor Boy.
Mm.
The last verse of Bachelor Boy. I'll never live this down is, as time goes by, I probably will meet a girl and fall in love. Then I'll get married, have a wife and a child, and they'll be my turtle doves. I didn't know about meter. We just put words, anything that filled that space near enough. And when you're sitting with the top writing talent in the country,
Yeah.
it's very scary. And they go, "Would you go up and do a couple of songs?" And it's like, wow, So I can remember all the bad ones.
That's another number one, you see.
Yeah, all number ones. Yeah.
So there perhaps is the answer to how to write a number one.
Not be a lyricist.
Well, I remember, I'm guessing it must have been about 65, and I was in a band called the Concord Quartet, and there was a guitar player called Jim Bennett, who's probably watching this.
Right.
And Jim he knew everything that the Shadows ever played. And he wanted us to be like a Shadows type band. It was difficult for me because I only had electric piano.
Yeah.
There wasn't a busting lot for me to do, really. But we had one particular Shadows LP, and there was one track on it that I loved, and I worked out a way of doing it on electric piano. We did it as the band. Not perhaps the most well-known of Shadows, Rhythm and Greens. Do you remember that?
Yeah, we wrote it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And we played it. I think we were the only band that covered it. We loved it to bits.
Well, you're probably the only band that understood it. Because I'll tell you when it was.
Had some great breaks in it.
I'll tell you when it was.
Whole fun thing.
In '64, we weren't out of style, but music changed, as you know. And everything, the Stones were here, the Beatles had been for a year, '63. The Stones was happening, and everything was R&B, man.
Yeah.
Rhythm and blues, man. They were all playing, everybody was playing rhythm and blues. And of course the Shadows weren't. We were doing Sunday night at the Palladium in silk suits.
Mm.
We looked like the Rat Pack. And we were still only about 22 or something, 23. Anyway, so we used to do, we had become, Cliff and the Shadows had become the establishment.
But you see, it's interesting what you say, how things go in a fashion, sort of out of fashion, become established or whatever, and how what goes around comes around. Mm. Because here you are, won't say how many years later, and you're about to fill the O2.
Well, the tickets go on sale.
No, you know jolly well it'll fill.
We don't know. I honestly,
well, let me tell you, it will, and I think deep down you know it will, because you go beyond establishment, and the Shadows have gone beyond establishment.
Cliff and the Shadows are back together for the first time in 20 years, and the only downside is probably half our audience have already died because of our age.
They have children,
You're going to have Hank and I will be 68,
mm-hmm.
Cliff will be 69, and Brian Bennett, our drummer, will be nearly 70. Mm-hmm. And we're older than the Rolling Stones, you know that, don't you? Much is made of the Stones' age.
Yeah. I just very, very quickly before we sort of finish, you've gone through a few changes, but not as many as a lot of bands have gone through. I mean, Brian's been with you drumming now.
Brian is the new boy. Brian Bennett is the new boy. He joined us in 1961.
And of course,
we've had a lot of bass players.
Yeah, because Jet and Tony left and did some stuff on their own. And had a couple of hits and things.
The big hits, yeah.
Jet's still around doing it. I saw Jet not so long ago.
Yeah.
And I must get this in because you now have a keyboard player in the band.
We do, because, well...
Or synthesizer player.
Well, no, he's a great, keyboard players.
Yeah.
But as you know, I don't have to tell you, telling your granny to suck eggs. When we made records with orchestras and strings, and all that, and our French horns and all that, you can do all of that now.
Yeah.
Here.
So now you can bring somebody in to do it.
So now we brought, suddenly Wonderful Land and Atlantis and all of these records sounded near enough the record.
Yeah.
You know.
So the O2, I mean, obviously, you and yourself and Cliff and the other guys, you've all kept in touch. You've all done things in the past. You've done the Shadows
doing
tours
lots of
and
separate things.
You've done lots of things. It's going to be quite amazing walking on the O2, isn't it?
Well, it is because I haven't even been there, but I think it holds about 18,000. It's massive.
And a few more, yeah. It's big.
It's big. We're doing all the big arenas, the Newcastle, Glasgow, Nottingham, Liverpool, all the 10, 12,000 seaters.
See, the great thing, you've got no shortage of music, have you?
The only shortage is the actual songs themselves, which are all 2 minutes long.
Do you lengthen them at all?
We haven't done it yet. We'll have to. I'll let you know on the when you come and see the show. Well, I think we'll have to somehow, but it'll be another solo. It'll be another solo because all of those pop tunes, when you look back 50 years and those hits we've had, most of them were 2 minutes.
Mm.
That was the intro, a couple of verses, a middle, a solo, and an outro. That was it. So we're going to have to play 100 tunes, I think, to do 2.5 hours.
Is there nobody else in the bill? Just
no
you?
one else, no.
Will you be finishing the first half?
I think Cliff. I was just going to say, I think Cliff and the Shadows will obviously open it. No support. We are the support act. We are the support act. Cliff and the Shadows will probably open, and then he'll go and have a rest while the Shadows play the instrumentals, and we'll probably close the first half, and then do the whole of the second half as Cliff and the Shadows. Yeah.
Well, I shall be there.
Yeah.
I wouldn't miss it for the world, but I will be incredibly disappointed if during the interval you don't change your jackets.
Goodness me, more expense. More expensive.
You have to go back to Finsbury Park. Bruce, thank you very much, mate.
Yeah, thanks.